Hey guys, Board now back with you, and on this video I will be reviewing the new CW series Batwoman. So this is a brand new series. First episode aired tonight in the UK. I've literally just watched it and I'm gonna get straight into it. So this review will have some spoilers, so just warning. And this new series has been talked about mostly because it's actually, believe it or not, the first superhero comic book series to have a lead who's a lesbian. That up to now that has never happened before, which is quite amazing and sort of shows how far behind they are. So yeah, finally they got to it. So that's certainly worth talking about. And the lead character in question is Kate Kane, who in the storyline she is the cousin of Batman, and set in the modern context of Gotham City, Batman has gone missing a few years back mysteriously. No one knows exactly what happened to him, whether he's dead, whether he's decided to retire. Sort of assumed that he's sort of retired, and ever since then the crime rate has obviously gone up, and there's kind of like this emotional outpouring from the public where they're very strongly in favour of Batman. They're saying keep the faith. There's kind of protest. And there's sort of a sinister or suspicious like attitude towards the government and the people running the city, and particularly this security firm called Crow, who are run by the Dougray Scott character, who's going to play a big part in the drama. And I think it's fair to say Dougray Scott is the biggest name of the cast, and so this isn't really spoiler, but at the start, like, the mayor of the city is saying shut it down, it doesn't look like Batman's coming back, so put the back signal out once and for all. And so everything is reliant on this security firm. So meanwhile, Kate Kane, as I said, the cousin of Batman, or of Bruce Wayne. At the beginning she doesn't know that he's Batman. She has been in isolation, in seclusion for years. We sort of find out later it was like her father who sent her away, and that's who Dougray Scott is playing, basically the father of her and of Bruce Wayne. And she's been in training, and when she hears of this new attack by this group, led by this character called Alice, who has a striking like resemblance to like the Wicked Witch in Alice in Wonderland, and she's played by Rachel Skarsten. Then that brings Kate Kane back to Gotham, and we slowly get the change from her into Batwoman of the title. So that's the plot. Then she takes over because there's obviously no Batman. And yeah, that's the setup. Ruby Rose plays Kate Kane, aka Batwoman. Familiar name, I think she's popped up in a few things. I wasn't quite sure how to place her. And as I said, kind of notable because it's the first lesbian character. So I'll talk broadly about this pilot. As I said, I will go into some spoilers. My overall feelings on it is sort of mixed. I think at the beginning, at least, it seemed to be doing something quite interesting. It seemed to be quite entertaining, at least, even if it wasn't like terribly original. But it sort of had a decent look to it and a mood, and certainly like the first kind of attack by this character Alice and her goons, almost like a terrorist style attack. It's at this like public event where, as I said, the mayor is kind of saying we've got to let Batman go, take down the signal, and all that sort of thing. That was quite a well staged sort of set piece, and I think the cast seemed pretty reasonable. Obviously, as I said, Dougray Scott's like the best known one, and he's very sort of reliable character actor. And certainly for those opening like scenes, I was quite into it. I mean, I wouldn't say it was amazing, but I was, quite sort of into it, and it looked like it could be interesting. I will say it does seem like very much the teen version of a Batman story, obviously in this case Batwoman. But obviously it's set in Gotham, and when this kind of source and the material, you kind of expecting something quite sort of dark and noirish. And at the start I thought we might get that, but that slowly like drifted away over the course of the episode. And the more the episode went on, the more typical CW it became. Now, I don't mind it being like maybe a teen, kind of early adult type show. I think that can still be enjoyable if the characters are well written, and if you do have a little bit of a style and a bit of an edge. But more and more as this opening episode went on, it just became clear that we were going to have a lot of this typical CW, like cheesy, like dialogue and flashbacks, and a lot of like music in the background, very like noodly style music to really signpost certain emotions. And more the problem with the pilot was then not just in its mood and its style, but also in some of the developments, that it just felt a bit too much like a soap opera version of see, it's tempting to keep saying Batman, but of this sort of story. So you do get several like revelations in this pilot, including at the end. So I think it's that sort of thing where they're trying to hook you for the series. But the problem is they're sort of treating it too much like a soap opera, which is not, I don't think, what the core fan base come to this sort of show for, this kind of story. I think you do want that sort of noirish. You certainly want an edge anyway, even if it is a lighter version. So the cast are interesting. I think what I like about Ruby Rose and her portrayal in the beginning, because she's very... They've sort of dressed her down and she looks kind of like a typical everyday sort of girl, and quite sort of punky. She rides a motorcycle, she dresses in leather, but regular sort of street clothes. Very sort of like just mooted sort of performance, and I think what I like about that is it does give her that everyday sort of feel, and just very natural. I thought her performance was fine. I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought, yeah, she kind of felt like this everyday sort of girl with this dark kind of past, and that obviously plays into it. And I think certainly for the first half of this pilot, I think it did have quite a natural downbeat sort of feel to it. And you know, it was a little bit moody, and as I said, I think that sort of whittled away a bit as the episode went on, where you did start to get the more stereotypical like CW type tropes, and because the plot itself is quite simple in the first episode. It sets up obviously Kate Kane becoming Batwoman. She discovers the Batcave at one point. I do like the little touch of like Alfred being the password actually. So the password for her to get into like the security system, and this is when she's trying to track down Alice, and because Alice has kidnapped Sophie, who someone Kate knows from a long time ago, and it goes into their past where they were kind of lovers, but Sophie got accepted into the academy and Kate didn't. Kate was kind of very rebellious and against the academy. So Sophie at the start of this is like on the force, essentially, the Crow, as I mentioned, which is run by Dougray Scott, his character, the father of Batman, of Bruce Wayne. So it does sort of explain, and this is where the flashbacks come like fast and heavy, and you do get. So one of the scenes I'm talking about, which is very cheesy in CW, is the flashback where we actually see Sophie and Kate saying goodbye for the first time, saying goodbye I should say, because Sophie's been accepted into the academy, and this is kind of a controversial thing because she's saying I need this, so like Kate sort of sees it as her kind of selling out and saying they won't appreciate you. So it's kind of the end of their relationship. But that scene is just a great example of like the CW feel and the cheesy like ballad type music in the background. Just signposting and telling you what you feel. And I think the look of some of the characters in the cast, although I said I thought the acting was sort of solid enough, I think some of the characters, the supporting characters, do have that very like pretty and bland CW type feel. So you have like this character who's a close friend of Kate, who it happens runs like a private sort of clinic. And so she's like helping patients. At one point she takes Kate in because Kate has been injured. She when she catches up to Alice and the rest, she's kind of like sort of injured, and so she's taken him. So this character, this friend of Kate, is obviously going to be a long running ally in the series. But for example, that not that there was anything necessarily wrong with the actress, but I didn't really believe she was a doctor, and she just had that kind of too pretty clean cut CW type look. So I think that's a good example. But as I said, Sophie gets kidnapped, and that becomes Kate's first mission when she comes back. And we see their past. We also see more flashbacks. We see the past with Kate, who lost her mother and her sister at a young age. So there's a car crash. We see a little bit of that at the start of the episode. We see more of it later, and we find out that Bruce Wayne, her cousin, who is of course Batman, he saved Kate, but he couldn't save the mother and the daughter. So there's ambiguity over that. So more and more is revealed to Kate over the course of the episode, including the fact that her cousin's Batman. So there's a lot of flashbacks, too many flashbacks. I mean, I might put that down just to this pilot and setting the case up, setting the past up. And as I said, discovering the Batcave and all that, there's like this like younger version of Lucius Fox, who of course Morgan Freeman played in like Christopher Nolan's like Dark Knight trilogy, and he looks like he's gonna be like comic relief because he's this very sort of like nerdy, awkward sort of character, and he does get a couple of good lines. I mean, as I said, the one about Alfred being the password, and she like kind of like handcuffs him up so that she can get into the computer system. So I sort of like the stuff about her like secretly investigating stuff, and kind of slowly building this kind of like persona and getting information like she's kind of a private detective almost. And there's this running theme because when she comes face to face with Sophie, we find out that there's a personal agenda that with Alice. We find out there's a personal agenda with Alice and with the head of Crow, the security firm, the Dougray Scott character. We don't know what it is at the time. We find out at the end of the episode pretty much. But Kate kind of, reasonably asks, well, I'm his daughter, why don't you kidnap me? And Alice just laughs, says, because Sophie's like the daughter he never had, where you are like the daughter he never wanted. So there's this idea that he's actually closer to Sophie than his own daughter, and it's kind of playing on that sort of like forgotten sort of girl, almost like an orphan type character. She like Kate's the one disregarded. So that stuff I kind of like. I guess I'll talk a bit more about the casting. Dougray Scott's an interesting one because I'm used to seeing him play kind of more sleazy, like underhanded sort of characters. And I think as this goes on, we're going to see more of this because I think it's going to get into like the politics of like this firm and with the government more. So I think he's definitely going to be quite a murky character. But on the face of it, in this first episode, apart from there's some question marks over the way he's treated Kate, but he's sort of presented at the start at least as kind of, a good sort of character. But and he plays it quite well. He plays it quite straight. But I think, as time goes on, he's going to be revealed to be a bit of a slime bag, which I'm fine with because he plays these characters really well. I think Rachel Skarsten, who apparently was in Birds of Prey, I think she's quite good as the villain, quite sort of slippery. I like the way she delivered the lines. I think the only problem is then it just feels like a ripped off sort of character. It feels very like ripped off of like Harley Quinn or off just like the Joker, that sort of villain where it's all very wisecracking, fast talking, kind of manic sort of delivery. She has that sort of pixie girl, kind of Wicked Witch style look to her. It's a very gothic style looking character, which is fine, but as I said, I think maybe it just feels too much of like a cliche. And I think that's part of the problem with this show so far, is that I think a lot of the stuff it's doing isn't too bad. It's just that it feels like it's been done so many times. It doesn't feel like that original. And I'll sort of say then, I think like the basic plot of this episode just feels too by the numbers, too been there, done that. I think just the whole personal history with Bruce Wayne, and that's kind of what motivates Kate. I think that's just one of these like setups for this sort of like storyline, and that's what I mean by it's the sort of thing maybe that pilots suffer from. So maybe once they get into like the main series and the storylines after this first episode, then it might become a bit more layered, if you like, a bit more to it. We'll have to see really, but I think at the moment it feels very sort of thin and not a lot of originality, but also just the stuff in this of how she becomes Batwoman, that she just comes by the Batcave, she works her way into it. I think although there's like the actual plot of her trying to save Sophie, which she eventually does, I guess no surprise, as Batwoman. I think that's quite basic, but I think also they try to like cram too many twist moments, and that's where the soap stuff really comes in, and that's where I worry there's going to be too much soapy type stuff. So another one they do, they kind of get you with a twofer at the end of the episode, because first of all, after Sophie's like rescued, there's a shock for Kate because she discovers that Sophie is married. So that's kind of like one of these soap opera type twists. And there's another one right at the end, which is sort of the big twist of the episode, which is that Alice is in fact Kate's sister, the one who she believed was killed when the car went over the bridge, essentially, with the mother, and Batman obviously saved Kate, but apparently couldn't save the sister, but there was some ambiguity because she was lost, and that's kind of the motivation for you. So Alice is in fact, she's not only Alice, but she is Kate Kane's long lost sister, assumed dead. So that's kind of the twist. So they're really hitting you with like the soapy sort of twist in a way, and that's your cliffhanger. And I don't mind that because at least they got it out of the way in the first episode. But yeah, just some of the plot details in this is so kind of by the numbers and a little bit clunky, the way she just happens to become like Batwoman. But the main weak points are, as I said, the typical CW stuff, like the music in the background. There's just too much music. There's like not enough like natural atmosphere. It just doesn't let the mood of the show breathe, and it's just noodly style melodramatic music telling you what to think and making it a little too on the nose and cheesy. Too many flashbacks. There's a voiceover which I think could become quite annoying over time. I guess it's alright in this first episode, but I think it's partly because she's like writing this letter to Batman, and it's quite a personal thing. But yeah, all the personal stuff in this episode was kind of the weaker stuff. So that's really the episode. I mean, it was alright. There was some good stuff in there. I think there's probably enough in there to make me watch another episode at least. I think there's enough that I could just pass off as like typical pilot sort of stuff. But I mean, with this being a CW show, there's always this concern, because obviously Greg Berlanti's name's on it, and I think sometimes with his shows they're at least quite knowing and entertaining. I think Riverdale's a bit like that, where it's kind of a full-on guilty pleasure, and I think it's sort of lost its way as it's gone on. But certainly that first season of Riverdale, I think, was quite knowing and had a bit of style, a bit of charm, and it was kind of so trashy. It had fun with it, I guess. But this could fall into that just typical CW style show, where it happens to be like a Batwoman show, which is done in this CW style thing. So it's not even like they're doing something campy and entertaining. It's like caught between the two stones. So it's not like the campy entertaining show, and it's not the dark and more serious show. It's just like a soapy version of a superhero show. And that was my concern as this episode went on more. But that's pretty much my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you thought of the pilot episode of Batwoman. Do you think it has much promise for the series moving forward? What did you think of Ruby Rose in the lead role? And yeah, any other thoughts on the comments and on my review. And yeah, it'll be good to hear from you. So I will be back next week. I'll take a look at episode number 2, see if it perks up. As I said, there were good things in this first episode. I guess another thing I should talk about is some of the fight sequences. I think, as I said, there were a couple of good ones. I think there was one, the sort of final one with Alice when they were fighting on top, and you kind of got this typical, where she's given like the ultimation or the dilemma, like, do you save Sophie or do you save Gotham type thing. And that's when Batwoman sort of like comes in and you get a fight. And that fight I thought was very fast paced editing. Yeah, too sort of busy, too kind of weak. And I think it's quite a low budget show, this. I think you can tell that, so that could be a sort of a problem with some of the action type scenes, but we'll see. As I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will review episode 2 next week and see how that goes. But I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.